So the next sample piece we're going to work on is the French seamed dart. So this is what the piece looks like. I have my dart here where I'm going to sew. I have my tailor tack for the dart point. So this one you're going to take, if this were the front of the garment, we're going to take wrong sides together and put those together this way. So we're going to do just like the French seam, we're going to sew wrong sides together first and then fold right sides together. So we get a nice clean finish on the front and a nice clean finish on the back. So I like to pin, so I'm going to pin these two pieces together. Take your time because as you can see, everything wants to move. So I'll pin these two together. So my first stitch is going to be at 1/4 inch. And I'm just going to sew to here. I'm not going to go all the way up to this dart point yet. So we'll do that first. Make sure that you're following a true 1/4 inch on your sewing machine. It's always a good idea to double check the lines that are on the machine and make sure they're accurate. Make sure you take your pins out. You can sew over pins, but it does tend to want to pull on the fabric, especially a really light fabric like this, so it's really better not to. And then the back stitch here. So this is the first stitch that we have. Flip your threads. So the next phase is we're going to press this open. We're going to do the same thing. We're going to trim this edge down just like in the French seam, so that we don't get any of these edges coming through to the front. And then on the next stitch, we're going to fold it this way, and we're going to go all the way up to that point. So I'm going to step away and I'm going to press this open. All right, so I have this pressed open. So I've pressed this, you can see, press that back. Got that pressed there. So now when I fold it this way, it's nicely pressed so I can sew along here. You can barely see, but you can see that tack there, that tailor tack right there. So that's my dart point that I'm going to be sewing 1 inch past. If you need to, you can always put a few pins in this. I like to put a pin right at that dart point so I have some reference as to where I'm headed. And if you need some pins in this area here, you can certainly do that. You can see how the fabric does want to slide around a little bit. So that's up to you. Now it gets a little bit weird here. You can see this, we have this point here. We're just going to smooth this out. So we're not going to create that point. So we're going to sew from here at 1/4, and we're just going to smooth out this curve right here, 1/2 inch past that point. So this is a 1/4 inch seam allowance. So again, our first stitch was a 1/4 inch seam allowance. The second one is a 1/4 inch seam allowance, and that adds up to 1/2. Those pins out of the way. Now here, I don't like to necessarily back stitch at this point. You can actually just stitch past, and then you can either tie off that, but you can see the fabric, the thread is very twisted. In some garments you'll see that it doesn't even get, nothing's really done with it, but since this is inside the garment and we'll see it, I'm going to tie that off by hand. So now you can see I've got that nice smooth curve here, and then we'll press this open. This is the front side of the garment, and this is the back side. So you can see that seam allowance is all nice and clean and finished. So I'll go press this and I'll show you the result. So this is the finished dart. So you can see we've got a curve in the fabric now. We've got an even seam allowance through here, except with the exception of that little point there. And on the back side, it's all nice and clean finished. Those raw edges are encased in that seam there. So that is the French seam dart.